What 5 things do you need to know to make the best decisions for your business over the next 30 days? Stand by. Welcome to this week's edition of Note School TV, where, every Wednesday at 11:05, we come to you live with, the best content and the best guests. And, this week, we're doing the monthly update. I know you guys love that. Eddie and I love doing it and sharing everything that's going on in the business out there with you. So you are in for a treat, and I'll bring Eddie on in just a minute. Do a couple of things for me. Make sure that you like this episode. Yep, go ahead and hit that like button. If you have not already subscribed, make sure and do that as well. And then finally hit that bell notification so that you will be, notified when we are about to go live at 11:05 every Wednesday. And that is Central Time. Also, please keep those comments and questions coming in, guys. Eddie and I love to hear from you. Makes our day to read those comments and to hear what's going on in your marketplace. And then finally, if you would like to know more about what we do at Note School, simply go to noteschool.com/TV. Again, noteschool.com/TV. And we would be glad to, point in the right direction, and you can learn how we can help you close more deals, right? So with that, let's see. I am going to bring on, founder of Note School, all-around great guy, my mentor, my friend, Mr. W. Eddie Speed.
Good morning, Joe.
How are you, my friend?
Well, I've been traveling a lot, been to a lot of events, and I'm in the process of going to some more. I've gotten a little, I got some air miles going with American Airlines here, Joe.
Well, you know what? That's good. Eddie, I have no status with them anymore.
I know we used to do 20 plus 3-day classes live, and now we do classes more condensed and virtual. We are coming back with a live class, by the way.
Yeah.
We have a big event that we're going to do a little commercial here a little bit on, Note Expo. We're going to talk about that. Yeah. But I use the content that we do that we gather for Note School TV. I use that content in a lot of speaking engagements.
I know.
And I'm very surprised sometimes that some of the data that we give, there's some very, 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 very advanced real estate investors that lean in and come back to me later and start talking about some of those things. Yeah. And a lot of times, you know what they say, Joe? I didn't know that. And that led us to your opening that said, what 5 things do you need to know? And the answer is, Joe, we're going to have more than 5 things, and you'll get to pick which 5 you want to use the most.
That's for sure.
We're going to have a lot of data here in this show, and we're going to talk about what's happening in the market. I like to basically call this market update, Joe, and the little news things that we do at the beginning of the podcast. I like to call them, I think, Joe, really what they are is their weather reports.
Yeah.
Right. And you live in Florida, where you live halfway between Fort Myers and Fort Lauderdale.
Yep.
And when a hurricane comes to Florida, you pretty much get to know about it.
Well, when it comes to the East Coast or through the Gulf, through the Atlantic or the Gulf, we're right in the middle, so we're probably going to get some of it. Yes.
And so those things really matter to you because you and your family and all of your friends and so forth, you make adjustments, and all of us make adjustments and various things. And so I think this allows us to make adjustments in our business. So let's pop some slides up, Joe. We got a lot of content to cover, my man.
We do. So we are going to, do a Hank Snow and move on, right? So
let's do it. Yeah.
So housing market is first up here. So let's see what's going on here.
All right.
So Eddie, according to Realtor.com, what's happening with home prices this fall? Here are the cities that are falling the most, the top 10, and the cities that are rising the most. And so as we look at that, we've got on the falling side, we start off with Myrtle Beach to Las Vegas to Stockton, California. Look at Austin. That was, well, look at that. When you've got Austin and Phoenix, those were, well, and this one and this one that went up like crazy, right? And I would say Las Vegas as well. And so now I think they're adjusting a bit, right?
Yeah, there's no doubt. And, I go to a lot of real estate masterminds and various events where, I would say kind of the top 500 house buyers hang out. And, some of them are like this and, oh my gosh, it's just crazy and everything's still just going up like crazy. And I'm like, well, nationally, we're not really in a crash. We say, I repeat this fairly often, Joe, we are not in a real estate crash and probably not headed for a real estate crash because of inventory, but we have a dent in real estate, and certain markets are feeling it and certain other ones are not. So I thought it was really funny though, Joe, the hottest markets, most of them are not mainstream markets. Boston and Naples, Florida are markets that we make reference to,
right?
Thinking, but the rest of them are like, you spend a lot of time in Manchester, New Hampshire, Joe.
Yeah, or Toledo, or Savannah, maybe.
I'm not laughing if you're from there. I'm just saying,
I know.
Some of these biggest markets are. It's a micro story. It could be manufacturing plan, or it could be this or that, or it could be something that isn't, we're not talking about the 20 biggest cities necessarily.
No, we're not. But these are the sub metros that are, and boy, look at the swing between Myrtle Beach and Naples there. And, these guys. So yeah, that's an interesting stat for sure.
Yeah.
Let's go to our next one here. So according to National Mortgage News, reported this from Black Knight, housing affordability is the lowest since 1984. So, Eddie, in order to get back to a 25-year average affordability level, it would require, well, these three things.
Wow.
Home prices falling 27%, rates dropping by more, not to 4%, but by, well, if they dropped it by 4%, they'd be about 4%.
About half, yeah.
Yep. And then look at that. A 60% growth in median household income. And I didn't spell median right.
Hey, Joe, I'm going to do a speaking presentation. And actually, I want that slide.
Yep.
Because this is an audience that has a big portfolio of rental properties. And a lot of these guys are looking to do seller financing. And so that's the kind of thing we're just trying to show you guys why this is important.
Right.
Use your audience and do that as well. So
that's for sure.
All right.
I will correct the spelling of median.
Yeah, do that. Well, I've got dyslexia. They know I can't spell, so they would never.
Yeah, those are some crazy numbers. And then the rate locks first 3 weeks of August at 435 or 453. I did another dyslexic piece there, according to Black Knight as well. So some crazy stats. And then this goes in, Eddie, to the home pricing index, and this is home price gains. They find new vigor as reported in the M report, and this is a source from CoreLogic. And this is just saying that 3.5 is the forecast by July 2024, and that's up to 3.5. So, we can see what happened here. Well, this is after the great the boom, right? And then we had these others, and then we were over here last year or in early 2022, late 2021, and we fell, but then we're back up, and then this forecast into 2024 as well.
Showing basically a decline.
Yeah, just up a little bit more there and then down, but still, we're looking at almost 5%. So so we're not calling again for that big crash there.
Got it.
So U.S. households on the brink with excess savings. Well, this is depleted by month end. This is by the San Francisco Fed. And apparently Americans, we had saved a lot of money, right, during the pandemic. And so it says U.S. data suggests U.S. household savings fell from a record of 2.1 trillion. And this is a couple of months old by now, but to about 190 billion by the end of June. So what it indicates really is that, well, the highest interest rates, and it will keep rates. Well, it'll keep rates up.
Yeah. This is, we had Dr. David Phelps on recently, and he had an article that was published in Newsmax, and
yes,
and he was talking about really a bigger recession to come than a lot of people are predicting. And this is the kind of data that David is looking at that's leading him to that conclusion.
Well, and then, there's so many things that we could talk about here, but, automobile loans, or, delinquency on those is high. Credit cards with over $1 trillion. And now, there's a lot going on out there, and we're just going to have to, we'll just have to see how it ends up here. But Eddie, there was some exciting news last week from, banks and lending, right? And that was our friend here, right? Mr. Powell, Chairman Powell.
Yeah, he didn't raise rates.
Yep. And, but he didn't say he wasn't going to, he didn't say so. He said, keep rates higher for longer and want to kind of stamp out inflation. And he said, of course, he did hold the key interest rate steady and forecast fewer cuts next year. So he says he's going to proceed carefully. And of course, then the central bank says that next year rate will be fewer rate cuts than we had expected, or they had expected in the past, because you got to get rid of inflation. So I wonder what inflation is, Eddie.
Well, I have read some articles subsequent to that announcement too, that they are predicting some rate increases more in the meetings to come through the rest of the year. So just because they didn't raise it this time doesn't mean that they're done with it. Joe, let's talk about inflation.
Yep, for sure. So with inflation, we're at 3.7 at this point. And the key that Chairman Powell wants us to be on is obviously going to be 2%. And we go from 3.2 in July up to 7%. And there it is. I mean, we look at at where it was, and if we drew a line straight down here, that was, the middle of 2022, and then we see where it did fall from. I mean, we were over 9%. Wow, Eddie.
Yeah,
and
crazy.
We are where we are now, but we kicked down, and now it's back up. And the light blue line there is the consumer price.
I want to remind everybody of something. This doesn't mean that prices are falling. They're just not as increasing as quickly. I just want to be clear. Everybody is really clear about what that means.
Eddie, if you think about this, logically, the prices have gone up, right? And all of that. And now you get to a new norm, and now they're even going up from what they went up to. Hence the,
that's why we're saying, inflation rate. It's not like we were at this price and it went to this, and now we're back down to this. It is, and why I'm even bringing this up, it's sort of Captain Obvious a little bit, right? But why I'm bringing this up is to remind us of affordability and how affordability relates to real estate decisions or note investing decisions or whatever the case may be.
That's right.
All right.
Let's look at rates. Eddie, share with us, dude.
Well, I mean, we focus on the APR. It's not necessarily the rate that is on the note itself. It's the effective rate that you pay. And this is a straight up Texas loan, 750 credit score, 20% down, $300,000 loan. Conventional mortgage is just a tick under 8. It's 7.912. FHA, which, by the way, remember 11% of FHA loans are delinquent.
Right.
Just saying. And then, if you do a 15-year fix, then if you can afford that payment, you can get down a lower rate. And Joe, I know there were a number of investment property loans that almost immediately went up after the Fed chair meeting. And that's funny.
It is.
Because the rate went up, but they didn't raise the rates. But it was just the promise of rates to come.
That's
and
right.
I think that's a read on the bond markets and why they did that. But
yeah, and you can see the graph there on the bottom of this with the 30-year fixed. It kind of was here.
Yeah.
And again, we're right there. We're right back at where it was, but it was over 8 there for just a bit, and that was middle of July. So there you go.
All right.
Mortgage applications decrease in the MBA Mortgage Bankers Association last update. Decreased for the 7th time in the last 8 weeks, and that is the lowest level since 1996.
What color car were you driving in 1996? Do you even remember?
God, I don't.
I just thought I'd ask that.
I know, right?
That's a long time back, Joe.
That's a long time back. And then you look at the refinance shares, decreased 29 to 29.1 from 30% the previous week. So it's just continually chopping through on that. And it's the sign of affordability and being able to get home.
Let me tell you something. After our little commercial for Note Expo, we're going to talk about commercial.
Yeah.
Right. Commercial real estate and multifamily. But I'm going to say this to you. The mortgage banking industry for residential loans is not in a good spot.
Yeah.
Their profitability and their balance sheets are not good. And this is not good for them at all. Yeah. This is a further punch in the gut.
Yes.
To an industry that does not need another punch in the gut. Now, truthfully, it's going to be good for the discount note business because this is creating inventory of discounted notes, them cleaning their balance sheets up and doing some things like that. And we're not gloating over that. It is a fact. It is a good fact for us, but this is a gigantic industry that this is just not good for. So, yeah. I'm not going to give a good weather forecast for traditional mortgage bankers, in the next 18 months. I think you're going to see a whole lot more of them going out of business.
That's it.
Not everybody. I'm not saying everybody's broke, but I'm saying there's some that are broke and they're hanging on and their numbers these are not encouraging for them.
Right.
All right, let's go.
All right. Well, we want to go ahead and play the
let's do this. So, guys, first weekend in November is the biggest thing that we do every year. We own Note Expo, and the biggest combination of creative financiers, real estate investors doing lots of forms of creative financing, people investing in notes now versus rentals for all the math and all the reasons that we keep talking about. Rents are declining and expenses have shot 30 to 50% up and creating a pretty good compression in what you can make doing rentals. So people say, I want to buy notes, and that's performing and non-performing. So let's hear from Note Expo.
We are at Note Expo.
It's amazing.
Phenomenal.
It's just fantastic.
It's like recharging my batteries. I get enthused again. I meet a lot of other people in the business. I get a lot of ideas.
Connections. I've made so many friends over the years of high-level investors, high-level business people.
You get out here and see people who are doing things on a level you're not there yet. So that inspires me.
It's been a great event. Lots of good people, lots of opportunities to network, lots of education, and the vendors are great.
Meeting all the people here from all over the country, wanting to know about notes.
And then the networking is just
all
crazy.
these people has just been stunning.
It's like coming home to a family, and there's a lot of smart people here, and everybody's welcome in. It's always good seeing familiar faces.
I'm sure it's going to empower me and lead to much better growth.
And there really is no other place you can go to figure out what's going on, like in the guts of the industry.
We're
Absolutely.
already registered. So.
We have put our money down.
All right, Joe, be there or be square.
There you go. It is a big time there, Eddie. It's a lot of fun and so many different people and just from all over. And it's a true expo, guys. With all of everybody you need in the business is going to be there. Plus, most of the players in the business as well. So it is a great.
I will assure you, Note Expo will be an event that you don't want to miss. And in the market situation coming up ahead, there's a lot of connections. There's a lot of information. There's a lot of decisions to make going forward that Note Expo is going to be a key component in your being confident in what you're doing.
Eddie, let's talk about hot deposits.
Were you surprised that I knew what that was?
I wasn't. I was surprised a little bit that, I mean,
that's an expression.
I didn't know about it, so I should have known better than to think you would have not known about it.
Actually, Joe, that was an expression that I first heard in the 80s, hot deposits. Right. And this was where banks and savings and loans could really amp up how quickly they could grow the bank before there were some regulatory environments around that. And they could do it by offering the highest deposit rates, and they just go compete in the Wall Street Journal for those. That's where I first think it came around first. And now, Joe, it's not necessarily to grow the bank, but it's keep from losing the bank.
It's to increase the liquidity.
Yeah.
Quickly. And the rates are kind of, they're off the charts. And the other risk about with these hot deposits is that as quickly as they put them in, they can take them out.
Yeah, it's a big deal. And I know people that are sitting on cash management, and we have some entities that we do this as well. You're trying to keep your deposits under the $250,000 per bank. And there are financial planning firms that specialize in helping you get that money parked. And I've had some personal experience with that. Yep. And because there's some businesses that I don't need to, I just need to maintain some cash in,
right?
Some assets we have under management. So I can tell you personally that we have chased some hot deposit deals before, and obviously we're trying to make sure they're properly insured in banks. So more of a reflection of what the condition of banks are.
Absolutely. And then finally, in the banking part here, 7.6 trillion of U.S. debt, $1 trillion here, $1 trillion there, right? Mm-hmm. Mature in the next year, and basically, what it's going to do is it is going to affect rates as we go through here. 31% of all outstanding debt. Wow! So the outstanding debt, Eddie, must be 7 times 3, about 25 trillion. Is that what it is? And but that's still below the 2020, what was 2020 when it may have a larger share. So anyway, I thought that was kind of an interesting stat. And of course, as they say here, Markets Insider, it adds additional pressure to rates. So
yeah, I think that's the key thing is the government is the biggest competitor to us,
right?
Competing for interest rate share or loan share, right? So,
all right. Let's talk about commercial multifamily. So
we haven't got nothing to say about that, Joe. Let's just go on and hang up.
Right? So 436 billion of multifamily debt potentially troubled. And let's see, multifamily financing rates are rising, which we all know, and it'll leave the borrowers with some choices, Eddie. You talk about these, right?
Joe, I'm around a lot of multifamily guys. a lot, right? And they're my friends. I respect them as people. There has been, in the last, call it 18 months, there's been a lot of kind of argument amongst industry people of how bad are we and what's the situation. And so because I don't want to be labeled as the guy that's on the sidelines, hoorah, multifamily's crashing, and I'm happy for everybody involved that's going to lose. No, that is not how we feel. But the market is what the market is. And Joe, these people facing these loan resets, they got some choices. They can just come in and pay down the debt.
Yeah, no, that's not a problem.
That's reaching out to all of your, in a syndication, that's reaching out to all your investors and saying, you remember when you wrote us a check for $100,000?
Yep.
Well, we need another $150,000.
Oof.
How's that going to go over?
Yeah, like a ton of bricks.
And then the other thing is try to refi with the principal and partially pay it down, which is what I think a lot of them are trying to do.
Right.
Some lenders are going to do loan mods, but I can tell you something, Joe. A lender that's bleeding on the other side is going to have some limitations in what they can agree to on a modification, because they've already agreed to a lot of modifications and deferred payments because people weren't collecting rent due to moratoriums.
That's right.
So there's a lot of things that have already happened that's now put the lenders in a very jeopardized situation, not just the borrowers, but who actually lent the money.
That's right.
And then, Joe, you're right. They can go mail the keys to the lender and say, good luck to you, pal. Hope it works out better for you. And I think there is going to be, unfortunately, Joe, I think there's going to be a lot of that.
Yep.
The last one, resecure equity.
Yep. Rescue equity with, I don't know, Eddie, let's do the air quotes, appropriate price point.
What did the guys do? The guy had a seminar this summer and he did a PowerPoint slide. A friend sent it to me. So I couldn't really use the slide, but he said, multifamily is in a price expiration mode. Or price discovery mode.
Okay.
A value, it's just discovering itself.
That's one of those things like the new ruse, Eddie. Just saying. And this was kind of interesting. So, National Mortgage News: outstanding commercial multifamily debt is on the rise, and but you see the chart here. So here's the total is in the blue, right? And then here's the multifamily. So the debt, even though there's a lot of, outstanding, in trouble and so on, ticked up a little bit. But here's the thing. But the volume was down 53% compared to the second quarter of last year.
Yeah.
And that's according to MBA. And a lot of that, as we were talking about earlier, is the bright spot right now in multifamily is all the new luxury rentals coming on the market. But what is that? How do the other classifications of multifamily then fare because of that?
Well, this is the belief system, Joe. And there's two schools out there. There's one school that says there's this gigantic shortage of housing and we're never going to have enough housing. We could build houses forever and whatever. And they're including in a lot of the optimists are including multifamily in that number. In other words, we can't overbuild. Right. Okay. The other school of thought, and where you see a lot of, commercial lending, commercial real estate threads, a lot of the talk in the market in the underwriting world is these projects that were underwritten 2 years ago. And I can drive you around Dallas-Fort Worth and I can show you countless projects.
Yes.
They're coming on the market between, 1st of October all the way through next spring. And this is exactly what they're saying is called the loan production. These were projects were already on the books. They were already in motion. And now all of a sudden they're seeking permanent financing. And Joe, they're now having to do free rent. They're now having to do rate adjustments as far as the amount of rent they can collect.
Yeah.
And I can tell you from experience, that what happens is the new units are occupied. They will not sit vacant.
That's right.
Because they will adjust pricing to go get them rented for whatever they need to get them rented for.
That's right.
What will happen, though, is the older units are going to really suffer.
That's right.
So
can't compete.
Now, okay, that's the world according to Eddie. You're listening to this thinking, I don't know if Eddie knows what he's talking about. And the answer is, the only thing I got to offer here is experience.
That's it.
And history this is what's happened when you have this. And so now all of a sudden, a lot of underwriter networks, groups, underwriter specific forums, and stuff. This has become the big talk. So that's kind of what it is.
It is what it is. So, okay, I chose this article because for those of you that's been around Note School and you've been around Eddie, you know that he has a saying, right? That you have to keep your powder dry. Right? So Eddie, according to Newmark, which is a big deal, big company, there's only 2 multifamily markets that have produced positive returns over the past 12 months, and that is Fort Lauderdale, and just a few miles south of that is Miami. And yeah, it's crazy down there. My son lives in Fort Lauderdale, and just like you said, it's just everywhere there's a new building being built, and they're luxury buildings.
Yeah,
but so where there's pain, there's also opportunity, at least for some other investors. And the dry powder, closed-end funds like Newmark has increased by 11%. And, well, there's about $219 billion that's going to go in and kind of look for some equity investments in some of these properties. So
yeah. Let's be clear about it. They're talking about dry powder is sitting on cash because they've not been able to find an investment. Dry cash,
$19 billion. Yep.
Yeah, dry cash, or and I just left an event that was a mastermind, and there was a lot of conversation, and this is why a lot of people are trending to notes, is because you can deploy your money and get cash flow in a market that is being kind to you right now, whereas some other investments aren't being so kind. So there you go. This is where we're competing with multifamily.
Right.
Note capital is competing with multifamily capital.
It is, and it's a little.
And by the way, we're winning.
We are. That's exactly. Just listen to the last 2 or 3 weeks of episodes. We've had some great guests on that are doing that exact thing. So let's talk about the rental and investment market, and then we'll wrap this up. So here's your rental market tracker according to Redfin. Landlords are charging near record rents, but they're offering concessions. So, we've got a little bit of drop here, not a whole lot, but a little bit, right? But then we see this year over year is a little more downward, just in a month to month process as far as median rents go.
Joe, in 1986, I leased office space in Dallas-Fort Worth, and I signed a 36-month lease, and I got 18 months free rent. That's a true story, by the way.
Well, and according to rent.com, a year ago you didn't see any concessions in the market, right? And today you're, just like you said before, offering 1 to 3 months rent free. All of these other concessions, free parking, and and all of these things that they're having to do to get it done.
Yeah, people say, well, why don't they just lower the rent?
I know, right?
Because the truth of the matter is, sometimes they keep that rent, that free rent off balance sheet, and they're trying to look like maybe they're producing numbers that they aren't. I'm not saying that everybody would do that. I'm just saying I hear it happen sometimes.
Well, the old accounting sayings, figures don't lie, just liars figure. So, and, so if we look at where rents are, holding up, obviously the Midwest region, we look at the Northeast, but we look at the West region here, which, we look at that and it's not as great, right?
No, it's there's generally, there's been a slide in rents the amount is different, and there's micro markets that haven't slid, but overall, we have definitely seen a decrease in what you can rent stuff for.
Well, in the year over year, Eddie, is there. So the only bright spot is the Midwest region. Everybody else is kind of trending down, as you can see here. So yep, for sure. Okay. And then this is well, we've known this has been coming, Eddie. So talk a little bit about it.
Yeah, I know some really big operators in the Airbnb space, and quite honestly, if you run it like they do, I was talking to a guy a few days ago and at a mastermind, and he's a big operator in the rent space, and he said, I just am really clear with all my staff that we are basically running a hotel.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to have the timeliness and the commitment to run the business just like we're running a hotel. And I think that's the deal. Is a lot of people bought Airbnb kind of thinking they were passive investments and they were just going to hire off some management group and they were going to go do everything. And the answer is they're not. They're finding out really quickly they own a business, and a lot of times that it's hard to outsource everything that has to be done. So we're going to see a decline in Airbnb. That doesn't mean it's going away, and that doesn't mean nobody can make it work. But it is not a passive investment strategy. That I can safely say.
Especially when you're doing single night rentals on a big house versus a hotel room, right?
Yeah. And I know a lot of people in the space, and I know some people have been really successful. I don't think any of them would tell you something different than what I just said.
That's right. All right. Well, let's wrap it up with foreclosure, NPL markets. So, Eddie, most markets at risk. So New Jersey and Illinois are facing a stressing housing market that's grappling with gaps in affordable home, underwater mortgages, and foreclosure and unemployment. So, yeah. So,
well, I think the one thing that I'm asked a lot, as I'm traveling around and stuff, is people ask me, what is the unrealized risk in the residential market? And I say it's non-performing notes. There's a big inventory of them. I don't think that we're going to have anything like a 2008. I think this is a really good time to buy non-performing notes, because you can buy a defaulted note and project the future value of the real estate.
Yes.
But the inventory of notes is still really high. And Joe, that your next chart really talks about that.
It does.
And I think it's, these charts are delayed. They're always delayed. So when we show you something, it's got a July number, and you're like, do these guys know it's September?
That's right. And Eddie, I just want to point out on this slide before I flip over of the 500, this is kind of interesting here that 5.5% were underwater.
Really?
Yeah. Adam says 574 counties around the country, and data showed that 5.5% of mortgages were underwater. That's a new one for me.
I mean, that's kind of what we're saying.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not, for as many defaulted loans as we have, that's not a high number.
Yeah. And this data is behind. We'll have, the new data will be out. We'll have it out for next, for August.
Circle that with your red pen there, Joe, just so they can see it. All right. So, Joe, this chart here, really the bottom line is, if you look at it, there's just under 2 million residential mortgages that aren't paying. The big news is, Joe, there's about 1.5 million of these loans that are like what we call seriously delinquent. That usually falls in the 120-day plus bucket, meaning that they're 120 days plus delinquent. The bad news is that the loans that fall in that bucket are 600 plus days delinquent. And those are the loans. There's big arguments about whether the government's going to hold off foreclosures till after the elections. Not to think that they would do such a thing, but it's just, I just left a distress note conference, and that was the big question of the day. And my question was, okay, what about the 120 bucket? And you got loans that are 600 days delinquent. And I would tell you, Joe, there were people in that room that are extremely savvy, that deploy a lot of money in the business, and they did not know that data point.
That's right.
And that data point changed their view of how long the government can wait before they allow the lenders to take action, because those loans that lender is having to write a check, big checks, to just kind of suspend those loans in the air. And so I think that the waterfall of these loans, we're seeing it coming. There's some certain asset classes that are coming. And so non-performing is going to be definitely a big conversation in 2024, I think. And
we are on top of it, Eddie.
We're looking at it.
Yep.
Guys, that's it. We hope you got some information out of this. Joe, once again, does a great job of gathering this stuff. We have a whole team that contributes and scrapes data across the country, but Joe constantly is doing it. Joe and I are sending stuff to each other literally on a daily basis. So this is kind of our hobby, so to speak. And but let me just tell you something. We make big decisions in our business based on this data. And Joe, my forecast is the note business has some very good days ahead of it. And that is not just selling note school. That is just simply saying when banks are struggling and rates are up, discounted notes are in our future.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So, Eddie, with that, we've got a busy fourth quarter, which will be here. Well, a couple of days it'll be here, right?
Yeah.
And we want to remind you, Note Expo is going to be huge. We can't wait to see you there. We want to see you there. And again, you want to attend, we'd love to have you attend one of our 2-hour master classes done by Mr. Speed and Mr. Max Keller, our Chief Market Officer. We'd love to have you do that. Eddie has made you an offer that you can't refuse. So, we want you to come as our guest. Just noteschool.com/TV, and we'll get you registered in one of those upcoming classes. Eddie?
All right.
That is it.
See you guys soon. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.